Hi, I'm Peter Finch. I am a PGA professional and I suppose golf influencer based up here in Manchester. Been making videos for about 10 years, and across that time I've been doing club reviews, course videos, anything to do with golf, basically. So really from the very start, it became apparent that moving into a new form of media, a new generation really of golfers, that actually gathering data and understanding the data was going to become more and more important. So even from the very early days of making the videos, especially with the club reviews, it was important to analyze the data, present the data, so people who were watching the videos could tell the difference between one driver and another, and then also in coaching as well, like to be able to give an example of how a swing changes, not only via video, but via data and via launch monitors. That became an invaluable tool to the point now where it's, I think, almost seen as a requirement for pretty much every coach to use some kind of launch monitor. I mean, the accuracy of the launch monitor tech is fundamental to actually being able to use it with a level of authority. If you're using a launch monitor and you know and see discrepancies, the person who you're coaching, for example, they're going to notice those discrepancies as well, and it's then very difficult to say, well, you can trust this little bit of data, but you can't trust that bit of data. So having an accurate reading every time is vitally important, because with that comes trust, and especially in lessons, trust is the most important thing. I chose Foresight initially just because of the way that the data was captured. So for me, I was familiar with radar systems as well, and we all know that kind of these different launch monitors all have their own benefits. But for me with Foresight, because it was a photograph, because it was data which was so consistent every time and not just based on ball flight, I felt that I could trust that really well. And then obviously as I was comparing the Foresight data to radar data as well, it just became clear that one was more consistent than the other. The club data using the Foresight software for me has always been preferable, again because of the consistency and also because of strike location. You know, this is something which in club reviews that I do and in lessons as well, it's really important to understand. You know, you could have a really good driver, for example, in reviews, but if you're striking it off center, you could find a weakness with that driver. You could find something which isn't quite right. And it's exactly the same for a golf lesson. You know, they could be putting a really good swing on it, but if their strike location is off, then they're not going to be seeing the results that they should do. And it could explain some of the dodgy ball flights that you may see within a lesson. You know, it might be nothing to do with a swing. It might simply be down to strike location. So what really led me to be mostly using kind of like the Foresight tech indoors was, for a start, it was pretty clear quite quickly the Foresight devices. So I started off with the GC2 and now obviously onto the quad. Using those indoors has absolutely no disadvantage when compared to using them outside, because the data is consistent. Where I used to coach in Burnley, it was usually kind of hitting into a pretty strong headwind. So it became a little bit confusing at times to be saying, okay, so this is what your data will normally be, but because we're hitting into a massive headwind, this is why you're only hitting your 8 iron 110 yards. So that was one of the reasons. Second reason moving indoors is because we have control over the environment. In the northwest of England, if you've never been here before, probably don't come in winter because it's completely pointless, especially if you're going to be playing golf. So indoors, it allows us to have consistency of data, and I don't have to wear 64 layers. So my setup indoors really began when we got this room, this office. So this was just before the first lockdown in COVID, and it was such a fortunate decision that we managed to get this room, because from then on we had a location to film and we had a location to carry on working, which was absolutely vital. Initially, because I didn't really have any idea what I was doing when I was setting up a studio, we literally had a mat in here and a net, and then of course we were using the quad, and that was fine, that was good. I had everything that I wanted. But then it was like, well, how do we make this look a little bit better? So then we moved on to the Simon and box setup, and that was really good, and it was very simple as well. You know, for me, as much as I love tech and as much as I understand how a lot of it works, Actually, the practicality of setting stuff up, that is not my forte. So having a sim in a box setup was really good. It was super simple, but now we're at a stage where we want to make the surroundings, we want to have an environment that looks really good on camera. So now having a setup like this, which is so much more roomy, it's cleaner, and you can just move around and demonstrate a lot easier, it's been fantastic. I mean, being indoors has really helped our business just because it makes it easier to make the videos that we need to. You know, it's so hard sometimes, especially this time of year when you have to review a driver and you look outside and it's snowing and you're like, well, this isn't going to work. So actually being indoors and having the potential to be working all year round is absolutely crucial. And you know, as it gets round to summer, all I really need to do is turn the heater off and I can continue to do lessons in here, I continue to review clubs. So having an indoor setup, it's so important because it's an all year round environment that you can use. You can't really trust what's going to happen outside. So having something indoors which you can control, it's been absolutely essential for what we do. The most important element of a good golf simulator for me is obviously the unit that you use. I mean, with the quad, for example, that I use, you can see the data on the screen on the unit. If you're going to be using a Foresight unit and you want to see a ball flight, then having some kind of screen, having some kind of projector is obviously going to be worthwhile. For me personally, I like to see also what a ball flight would look like. And especially this year, I've been using the FSX Play software so much more, so I can get around all these courses. That has been really good. Like to have the ability to look outside, see snow on the ground, shrug, and then go play Pebble Beach. It's quite nice. The software has changed remarkably, actually. I mean, to begin with, all I really needed was just the range basic FSX software, so I could show lessons, what their ball data was doing. I could show the difference between drivers just in a table format. But now, with everything that we're doing, the improvement in the software and how everything looks allows us to just tell those stories in a much more professional and much better looking fashion. And you know, it's the same as anything, as time progresses, as software gets better, things just start to look more and more impressive. And it's certainly something which has been noticeable over the last 2 years, the amount of people who are using indoor simulator setups to simply just create content, make videos, and invite people into what they're doing just in an indoor environment. You know, the requirement for me to go outside onto a proper golf course while still being there, actually doing stuff in here, it still has such an important value. So having an indoor setup for my own golf has definitely helped. One of the main things it's actually helped with, which I didn't think, is my short game, my wedges. So certainly before a season starts, before I start playing in competitions, like my wedge play has always been historically, let's politely call it rusty. Whereas now I can actually understand what my gapping is before even the season starts. I mean, I can set temperatures, I can set what conditions would be like and how they would affect what my ball would be doing once I get out to the course. So in a weird way, even though I certainly in the past would have thought as a sim as somewhere where you can just go bash drivers, actually the short game aspect has really, really moved on in the last few years, and that's where I've seen the biggest improvement within my own game. If you're going to be using your simulator for practice and to improve your own game, I think it's important to understand how to use it properly. So with the different software that you can get, don't just get into a habit of going on the driving range and just hitting ball after ball after ball, you know, hitting 28 times in a row. That's what's known as block practice. Now, there is a need for that at times. You know, you want to be able to work on your swing, you want to be able to try new things. But if you just get stuck in a mode of hitting one club over and over and over again, that skill will not be as transferable once you actually get out onto the golf course. So I use FSS Skills Challenges, for example. I use the games to ensure that when I'm practicing, I can hit a 50-degree wedge 120 yards, but then the next shot that I'm going to have to hit is a 7-iron, and the shot after that is going to be a driver, then it's going to be an 8-iron. It's varying up the clubs and the types of shot that you hit, and not just getting stuck into a mode of block practice. There are so many more options, and there are so many ways that you can get creative with the software rather than just using it in its base range setting. So what's the advantages of some of these different units? I mean, I've been lucky enough really to start at the GC2, that kind of very first model, and work all the way up to the quad that I have now. The GC3, which I was using predominantly as an outdoor unit, was absolutely fantastic, and it gave me all the data that I really needed. I could quite happily use the GC3. And that is something which, certainly since I've been working a little bit more in a TV space and I've been going to like different tournaments, using a GC3, using a quad is something which practically pretty much every single tour pro that I watch out on the range has. I think for me, probably it's just the ease of setup, so you can just get this unit out, you can plonk it down in front of where you're hitting, and then you can go. There's no faffing around, there's no real difficult setup needed. So that is something which I've really seen. So if you're somebody who wants that flexibility to move around with a unit, then I'd probably say the GC3 is a really good option. So the plans for 2024 have actually started with this room, with the simulator build. It's going to enable us to achieve some of the content plans that we want, and that leads us kind of into the spring and into the summer, where I'm going to be playing in comps again, which I'm really looking forward to in a kind of sick kind of way, and other kind of travels that are going to allow us to use here as a base to really kind of launch off into all these other video projects. It's going to be a really exciting year. I am looking forward to it.